Hi kids, how you doing today? Welcome to Thursday Storytime. I've got Charlie here today. Do you remember Charlie? He's going to listen to the story too, maybe. Okay, remember where we left off yesterday when Simon had found where Jesus was. So, on with today's chapter. Jesus was there in the midst of the great crowds. His disciples were trying to keep the people in order so that they would not press too close. Those who had brought sick friends were taken to Jesus. Mothers with ill children begged to get closer. Everyone was excited. Is he there? Has he done anything wonderful yet? Oh, look at that mother. She is weeping, but she looks so happy. A little woman came pushing through the crowds carrying a dark-haired baby. See, she said, with tears streaming down her cheeks, he has touched my poor child, and now she is better. She has been ill for months. Just a touch from his wonderful hand, and the colour came back to my baby's cheeks, and she smiled. The crowd looked in silence at the happy mother, whose tears of joy fell all the time. The child crowed and reached out her hand. The mother pressed her close. A man like that should be a king of all the world, she said. So kind, so good. He is indeed the Son of God. Simon saw the baby and the mother. He saw other people too who had been healed by Jesus. I was a cripple, but he made my legs straight, shouted a man coming through the crowd. See, I can walk again. Simon listened and stared. He saw a girl who had been blind, and she came joyfully by, looking wonderingly at everything. She was blind, said her mother, who was holding her by the arm. Yes, blind since she was a baby. But Jesus put his fingers on her eyes and spoke to her, and now she could see. Now this is the gladdest day of my life. Simon tried to push through the crowds. He wanted to get nearer to Jesus. He could not even guess where he was, because he was small and could not see over anyone's shoulder. The men did not like Simon trying to push through, and they were rough with him. The disciples came round among the people, talking to them, answering questions and teaching them. Simon saw one of them, but he did not dare speak to him. If only he could go up to him and say, "Will you please take me to Jesus just for a minute?" Then word went around among the crowds. He is going to talk. Jesus is going to tell us stories. We must be silent. A great quiet fell on the crowds around Simon, and he heard a voice speaking. Every word fell clearly on the air. Simon listened, his heart beating. He couldn't see Jesus, but he could hear him. It was a strong and lovely voice to listen to, a warm, friendly voice that spoke simply and clearly. The people around Simon were poor, simple folk who could not understand long words and difficult teaching. So Jesus chose simple words and told them stories into which he put the truths he wanted them to learn. There he is, Jesus, sitting up there on the rock, telling the stories. He told them things like, love one another, be honest, be truthful, be just and generous to one another. Simon listened, but he wanted to see as well as to hear. So he edged his way a little nearer, and then he saw Jesus. He saw a man sitting on a rock. His head was bare to the sun. He had a face that Simon wanted to look at all day. A kind, strong face, whose eyes could be filled with pity or could be dark and stern. Now they were filled with kindness, and they looked from one to another of the crowd as Jesus told his story. Then Simon felt what many other people felt. His heart was swept with love and admiration for this amazing man, whose whole life was spent in helping others and in bringing health and happiness to both bodies and souls. I wish I could do something for him, the boy said to himself. If only I could. I should like to give him all I've got. But I've got nothing he would like. Simon stood and listened. He had no idea of the time at all. The sun had risen high up into the sky. Now it was going down again. It went lower and lower. The day was going. The boy had not eaten anything all day. He had not felt hungry as he usually did, or if he had not even noticed it. He had not once thought of the basket of food. He had only wanted to see and hear Jesus. Simon saw some of the disciples go up to Jesus and speak to him. Master, they said, this is a desert place, and the day is almost gone. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the country round about and into the villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. And Jesus said, give them food to eat. The disciples looked at their master. Shall we then go and buy 200 pennyworth of bread? They said. Shall we give a little to every man to eat? Simon edged a little nearer. People whispered around him. Jesus says we must have something to eat. We are hungry. We have been here all day. But where can we get food in such a place as this? Then Simon heard the clear voice of Jesus. How many loaves have you? Go and see. The disciples went about the crowd to see if anyone had brought bread. But either the people had forgotten to bring food in their excitement, or it had been eaten long before. There seemed to be none. Simon saw Andrew, one of the disciples, coming near, asking if anyone had any bread. And a sudden thought came into his head and made his heart beat. I've got my 5 loaves and 2 small fishes. I can give them to Jesus. Perhaps he will eat them himself. I wanted so badly to give him something, and perhaps I can. Simon went red and his eyes shone. Andrew came nearer. Has anyone any bread? Simon pushed his way nearer to Jesus. The disciple felt a touch on his arm and turned. A small boy was standing by him, holding up a basket with 5 loaves and 2 rather small fishes. Here he is, Simon, showing Andrew what's in his basket. You can have mine, said Simon, his face redder than ever. Will they do? Andrew nodded, smiling. He led Simon right up to Jesus, and the boy looked into that kind, strong face and saw the dark and friendly eyes. Simon could not say a word. There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes, said Andrew. But what are they among so many? Jesus looked at the slices of bread and the little pickled fish. Then he looked at the great crowds on the hillside. 1,000, 2, 3, 4, perhaps 5,000. And he had 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes to feed so many. Make the people sit down in groups of 50 or 100, said Jesus. So the disciples went among the crowds and made them sit down in orderly groups. Simon stood still beside Jesus, proud and happy. What was Jesus going to do? Now, boys and girls, we're going to have to leave that there till tomorrow. So make sure you're listening up on tomorrow for the last part of the story. Find out what happens to Simon's Loaves and Fishes. We'll see you next time. Bye.